Hello, hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. The title of this talk is Nato'S Nakedness and Prophetic Fulfillment. Nato'S Nakedness and Prophetic Fulfillment. And to kind of start with at least the prophetic aspect of this, I will quote here Isaiah chapter 47, starting at verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. In other words, everything is going to be exposed. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. As for our Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts is his name, the Hakodesh of Israel, the Hakodesh of Yeshadalo. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people. I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. So that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. Hubris. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. So try it, is what he's saying. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them, they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. Well, I'm keying off verse 3 here. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man, rather as the Redeemer of Israel, Yahweh. So when I say NATO's nakedness, NATO is there obviously in its literal sense, that formation that is led by the United States. So this Babylon, O virgin daughter of Babylon, includes NATO. It includes the United States. Sad to say it, but it includes the United States as the principal power within that force projection known as NATO, known as US, UK, got to include the UK there as well, and NATO, and also all of the sort of vassal states of Europe, the EU, that are joined now with the US, UK, and NATO in prosecuting this very highly provoked war against Russia. And Russia had to strike back because they were right there on the man's front porch. Okay, they were surrounding Russia. And Russia is still, if you look at a map showing these things, Russia is still today surrounded by US military bases in all those countries that were formerly part of the Warsaw Pact. Poland, Georgia, Romania, Turkey is right in the underbelly there, it's part of NATO. And now they wanted to bring Ukraine into that, right up next to Russia. And Russia said, well, no, we can't have that. Russia tried diplomacy for at least 8 years following that Maidan coup in 2014 in the Ukraine. Tried diplomacy, tried Minsk I, tried Minsk II. And we now have revelations come out that these were never meant, these agreements were never meant to be fulfilled. What was that former Chancellor of Germany, her name again, Angela Merkel, she confessed to that. That former President of France, Hollande, he also confessed to that. They were just buying time. And they do still have in mind to dismember Russia, break it up, and to loot that country of its immense wealth. That is what has been the whole program. Going back a long way. Not only 1991, they succeeded for a while under Yeltsin when the Soviet Union essentially collapsed first under Gorbachev. And then Yeltsin took over, and the oligarchs were there snapping up huge state enterprises for a song, whole industry. So Putin came in and put a stop to that, and so they've hated Putin ever since. They've tried, as what's his name, Anthony Perkins talked about in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. They have a sort of a tried and true methodology for dealing with the subjugation of whole countries. First, they use somebody like Anthony Perkins. They come with the Harvard and Yale type graduates with wearing pinstripe suits and so forth, tied to Wall Street, tied to the banks in London and so forth, and they offer loans which are intended to sort of entrap the countries, and it has worked spectacularly well, certainly in Africa, another continent with huge and immense natural resources that the West has tried to loot and have succeeded in looting for its own, going back at least to the Berlin Conference, have succeeded with that colonialistic phase. And now they're trying the neo-colonial phase, and that's where they bring these loans through the IMF and the World Bank and so forth. and sort of bring countries into subjection that way. They've tried it and succeeded also in Latin America. And what they also do, if that does not work, according to Anthony Perkins, and there's no reason to doubt because the evidence is out there in our face. If that doesn't work, then they deploy what he calls the jackals, the assassins, so that those presidents and prime ministers who do not cooperate, who do not open up their country to pillage and rapine by the West, find themselves eliminated through assassination. Okay, or at the very least through deposed through coups. They did that in going back at least to Mossadegh in Iran. And I don't have to kind of give a whole list. Allende in Chile, they took him out. And more recently, Saddam, they took him out. And Gaddafi, they took him out. But in the case of Gaddafi and Saddam, the jackals, that phase of the three-part sort of strategy in that regard did not work because Saddam and Gaddafi were well enough protected by their own security apparatus, so the assassination schemes could not work. So the next phase, if that doesn't work, then they actually send in the military. And that's what they did. And the military arm is NATO. That's what they did to take out Gaddafi. That's what they did to take out Saddam. That's what they did to take out that fellow Milosevic in erstwhile Yugoslavia. And they broke up that country, Yugoslavia. So that is what they have been doing, and this is, here in Isaiah 47, they are called out as being Babylon, the daughter of Babylon. So is Babylon. Babylon in Scripture was that first kingdom. Prophesied and spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Daniel in chapter 7 of Daniel spoke of four, sorry? Oh, you're welcome. Spoke of four kingdoms that would arise, the first of which was Babylon. And I won't go much into that. Everybody has heard of Babylon, that dream of Nebuchadnezzar, where he was the sort of first of four that would arise. So after Babylon came Medo-Persia, and after Medo-Persia came Greece, and after Greece came that fourth kingdom that was not otherwise named. And the fourth kingdom of the Gentiles, it is so described, it would then constitute in effect the daughter of Babylon, because it is the ethos, that ethos of rapine, pillage, and plunder, of the strong taking advantage of the weak, which is what latterly the United States has represented. So we have, there's always sort of apparent contradiction, because when you look at the United States, if you look at it in a certain way, you say, oh, that is that shining city upon a hill. The ones who have proclaimed and brought about democracy in the world, freedom in the world, an example in the world. To say in the United States that have arisen all of these preachers, from Billy Branham to Billy Graham to Ellen G. White and etc., who sent their missionaries around the world, preaching the good word, preaching the gospel. So in one sense, they are an example to the world, but in another sense, here they are outed as that virgin daughter of Babylon, purveyors of all of this wickedness. And here in verse 3, the prophecy is, thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. So that contradiction is there. That is not really problematic. So this is by way of sort of defining terms. If I say Nato'S nakedness, by NATO I am implying and including straight away the United States as being that daughter of Babylon. Okay, so Babylon, and who answers to that title, comes in many guises. Scripture also speaks of Gog and Magog. And I have uploads on this site that deal with the definition, who really is Gog and Magog. Because Babylon is tied in with Gog and Magog as well. It is a hugely complicated story, but still on all the sort of bare lines, the skeletal parts of it are simply enough. Because, as implied right here, as for our Redeemer, meaning the Redeemer of Israel, Yahweh of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. So this is now bare bones skeletal structure going on. Because the daughter of Babylon represents forces now that have been arrayed against Israel, through Israel. And through Israel, Israeli Negro, by definition now. That's what the word Negro originally meant. It meant the people of the same tribal root as Nega David, where Nega is a praise title that was applied to David and so came to mean king. Nega meaning the one, that son that is watched over, okay, impliedly by the Most High, the apple of his eye. So that word Nega came to mean king, and so the people of King David were called Negroes. It's not a reference to a skin color now, but it is a reference to a seed line. And I've always sort of maintained on this channel that we need to stick to fundamentals. We need not to get caught up in incidentals. And skin color is one of those incidentals. Why? Because who has now made NATO naked? It is Russia. Russia. And that's a Hebrew word when you break it down. Russia, it is Ra-Sha. Ra means king in the ancient Hebrew. Sha is that letter, consonant, that is depicted by sharp teeth. So Rasha, in its original sort of Hebrew meaning, just by the sound now, because the sound carries meaning, is that king with the sharp teeth. And he is the one that has now made NATO and all who are combined part of that formation. He is the one that has made NATO naked. Because what have we seen in the past just a few days? First, of course, that town Bakhmut, the Russian name for which is Artyomsk, has finally fallen after over 200 days of battle. And this and Ukraine had prepared very strong sort of defenses in that city. So after the fall of Bakhmut, there's no other sort of fortified city that Ukraine can depend on, because they knew this war was coming. They had planned for it, but they hadn't planned well enough. Russia knew it was coming also. Certainly as a major contingency, And they planned very carefully for that contingency. They were hoping it wouldn't come to it, but it came to it. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about the sort of, historical unfolding of that war, because it was prophesied what would happen. But how was now Russia showed the nakedness of NATO? It's not only the fall of Bakhmut, that's just part of it. So Ukraine and its supporters, US, UK, NATO, will now be, oh boy, what do we do now? What do we do now? But they are now exposed as naked. They have no game-changing weapons that they cannot bring to the table. They brought this T-777 howitzers that was supposed to be a game changer. The Russians quickly adapted and found ways to take them out. They brought HIMARS. The Russians quickly adapted and found ways to take them out. And then they brought the Patriot missile defense system. And Russia has now taken out that Patriot system that was there, deployed around the capital city of Kiev, and taken it out with a hypersonic missile called a Kinzhal in Russian, which means dagger. It's hypersonic. And the Patriot system is sort of at least supersonic in terms of the missiles that are used by that Patriot system. It's supposed to take down, whatever could be thrown at it. And it too was destroyed. They could not shoot down that hypersonic missile. Now, when you do the sort of, hard analysis, I did operations research, so I know, the kinds of calculations that one would have to do to try to shoot down a missile. You've got to track it. You've got to try to predict its trajectory. You've got to try to predict where it's going to arrive at. If it's a ballistic missile, the sort of ballistic path can be fairly well predicted once you get a few, sort of readings off that trajectory using radar. You can get, because it's going to be a nice parabola. So you can more or less predict where it's going to drop. And if you know where it's going to drop, you can calculate an interception sort of trajectory now for the missile you're going to aim at it to bring it down. And the only thing is to make sure that the missile that you aim at it is going to be fast enough to be able to sort of fulfill the requirements of the interception trajectory that would have been calculated. But they cannot do it for the Kinzhal because it's coming in at hypersonic speed. And it is not ballistic. So it goes very, very high up into the atmosphere. And then at the final end, it turns and it dives vertically down. And then when it's diving vertically at least for some time, it is invisible to radar because of some plasma type effect owing to the speed at which it's coming. So the radar can't even pick it up. And if you can't track it, you can't calculate an interception trajectory. Now, I wouldn't say it is impossible to shoot it down, but it is well nigh impossible. And to shoot it down, I can, just sort of off the top of my head, you would have to shoot off, the equivalent of a shotgun blast, but using missiles. So you kind of cover a wide enough area of that, trajectory of the target, the Kinzhal target coming down on your head. So that, you hope with such a sort of a shotgun kind of an approach, you can, get lucky, so to say, and one of those, missiles will take it down. So you've got to send off a whole salvo. And by the way, there's that fellow on YouTube, Andrei Matyanov, Russian expert in these areas, far more so than I, and he too is operations research background and trained. So it's a probability kind of calculation. And I remember in one of his videos, he did show that the kind of number, the size of the salvo that would have to be aimed to try to bring that thing down would be like 21 missiles. And even that wouldn't give, it would get maybe an over 90% chance probability, maybe. I forget the precise numbers that he used. So when that Kinzhal was coming down on the Patriot battery system, you could see, the 30 odd Patriot missiles were fired off in the space of 2 minutes, and still it wasn't sufficient to do the job. 30 missiles. And each one of those missiles cost apparently $5 million. So that's $150 million in the space of just 2 minutes. And still it didn't succeed. And the Patriot system was taken out. So if each missile, that's like a bullet. If each bullet costs $5 million, think about the cost of the gun. I don't know what the Americans, Raytheon Corp is charging, people that buy those systems for the Patriot Defense system. But evidently, prices in the order of $1 billion is mentioned. And all of that now is if you check out the stock market price of Raytheon Corp, it would have taken a dive, just like the Kinzhal that knocked it out. Okay. If indeed, for example, the White House is defended by a Patriot missile system or series of Patriot, missile batteries, now even the White House, you can't be too sure that it has a proper defense against what the Russians can throw at it. And the Kinzhal is not the only hypersonic missile that's in their armory. They also have Zircon, and they also have a bigger one called Samat or Sarmat, I think is what it's called. And that one they could fire off from Russia and target the Pentagon, or target the CIA offices in Langley, or target the White House. And America seemingly have no real defense against that. So this is how naked now they have been made. They're now exposed. They've been sitting a queen. They have been sort of hubristically confident in their absolute superiority in terms of military technology and weapon systems. And that bubble has been burst. That is what has now happened. And guess what? Not only was this nakedness already prophesied, but this also was prophesied, Ezekiel chapter 39, and I'm going to read the whole of this, Ezekiel chapter 39, because it is so important for understanding the prophetic dimension of what now is going on. This is where it's at now in the world. It's Russia, Ukraine, and NATO. With NATO being Babylon, and Russia actually being Israel. And I'll read another scripture as to that. I'll read the first 3 verses. of Ezekiel 39. For now, therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Again, I make reference to an earlier video upload I've done on who really is Gog and Magog. Well, Gog and Magog certainly includes that fourth projection called US, UK, NATO. And really it is headquartered in the city of London, that 1 square mile district in the heart of metropolitan London, where world finance is located. And I'll say some more about that. And led by that banking house, headed by the family known as the Red Shield. Let me not use the actual name. So you do the translation, Red Shield, put that into German, and you have their name. But anyway, verse 2. And I will turn thee back, and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. Yeah, now mountains of Israel has first a literal meaning, so it could refer to the inheritance land of Israel per se. It also has a metaphorical meaning, where the word mountain is used to represent a power. And in fact, mountains of Israel could mean the power of Israel wherever now Israel is scattered. Because Israel was scattered to various promised lands, one of which was what is now called Russia. So the mountains of Israel metaphorically refers to the power of Israel. And by the way, that is also there in the word Armageddon. Har Armageddon is a reference. Har, mountain. Ama, the people of the Gededi. Gededi meaning the people, again, of the watched over David. So it is exactly equivalent to the word Negro. Those who are the people of King David, tribally. You understand, which are the children of Israel. But here is verse 3, and I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand. So this is now 3 times this is fulfilled. They send the howitzer, the T-777, and that made no difference. They sent the HIMARS. Again, this is like a kind of an arrow, isn't it? So or a bow and an arrow system, right? So because the C-777 is a howitzer, it's like a bow and arrow. It's the howitzer per se is the bow, and it is shooting off these shells. Those are the arrows. Well, what did the Most High said he would do about that? I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall. So he did it with HIMARS, he did it with T-777, and now he's done it with the Patriot system. And they got nothing else to bring to the table. They cannot, with what they have, easily shoot down a Kinzhal. I will not use the word impossible, but for the moment, the Patriot is not doing it. Okay, and that is now proven. And then when you do the calculations, operations research type calculations, you realize they would have to be shooting off salvos, essentially like using see the Kinzhal is coming in at such hypersonic speed. It's faster than a bullet. If you take whatever high-powered rifle you care to choose, okay, the speed of the bullet coming out of the highest high-power rifle is hypersonic. Kinzhal is coming at faster than the speed of that bullet. That is how fast that thing is coming in. So imagine now trying to take out a bullet that's coming at you at that kind of a speed. And you're trying to use now another rifle. Okay. And you have to get now, you know, obviously you can't do it with naked eye, you can't do it with even a telescope or sights along the rifle. You have to be doing it using the computer with some sort of a radar device to pick up. And then you have to, you know, find a way now to get the rifle that's going to try to shoot that bullet down. You have to try to get that, that rifle to you know, calculate the trajectory of the incoming bullet, and now you must aim that rifle and now try to shoot that bullet with the. It just is, again, I will not use the word impossible, but you see, you get a sense of how difficult it is to try to do that. All right, now suppose you don't try to shoot it down with a single bullet, but you try to shoot it down with a whole a shotgun blast of bullets. Okay. You still, you know, the kind of probability of being successful in that regard, it is still only a probability calculation at best. You understand? And so now this is what you have to try to do now with missiles. And part of what is required is that the missiles that you fire to shoot down a hypersonic missile itself must be hypersonic. Unless, well, there is a kind of unless, but let me not try to go off into that. And that is what the Americans do not have yet. They do not yet have that hypersonic capability. They have a supersonic kind of a capability, but hypersonic they still don't have. So they're now exposed as naked. So now they're talking about sending F-16s. I mean, that is a forlorn hope. Forlorn hope, not a chance it will make any kind of a difference. And they know that. The military, hard-nosed military minds that put their minds to that already know that. I'm not going to go into all this sort of technical detail. It's there on YouTube if you look it up. Colonel McGregor has said a few things about that. Again, that Andrei Martyanov has said something about that. Other people have said things about that. Garland Nixon, I think, has analyzed it to some small degree. And others who, oh yes, that fellow in England, Alexander Mercouris has talked about it a little bit. But they all have to rely on subject matter experts, and the subject matter experts are saying it's not going to make a difference because the Russians will shoot the F-16s out of the sky. Their air defenses are so good. As a matter of fact, there's even the suggestion that they would be able to shoot F-16s out of the sky and the F-16 doesn't even see what's coming at them before they receive the incoming fire. So it's going to make no difference. So NATO is naked. NATO is naked, and it is being prophesied. It's there, which I just read it. Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 3. And I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand. You can't fight God. I want to come back to Ezekiel 39, but first let me go to Obadiah, because there is some may not quite get the idea that Russia is now equated with Israel. But let me read. So I will simply assert that this is what is happening here. Obadiah chapter 1 verse 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. Well, Joseph here is Mr. Putin or Russia. And the house of Esau. Well, Esau again is US, UK, EU, NATO. Gog and Magog. That's all of who Esau is tied in with. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. For Yahweh hath spoken. So this is of a piece with what I just read in Isaiah chapter 47. And it is of a piece with what I just read at Ezekiel chapter 39. So this is what is happening prophetically. Now again, this requires that we must understand that Russia is Israelite. So the mountains of Israel referred to there in Ezekiel is referring to the power of Israel. And that power of Israel is at this moment in time wielded by that house of Joseph, which is so-called Jews who are not of the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they refer to this fellow here, referred to it at Obadiah verse 18, as Moshiach ben Joseph. Well, Moshiach ben Joseph is Mr. Putin, and he is the instrument now being used to make NATO naked, or to make daughter of Babylon naked. Okay, so this prophetically is what's happening. Now let me go to, I'll go back to Ezekiel 39 because I have to read the whole of it. But let me first go to Revelation chapter 17, because this is part of the prophetic picture. Here again, the doom of Babylon. And I'm going to fast forward to verse 16, and then I will go back and I'll read the whole thing. Verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. This is Mystery Babylon. But I equate the whore, W-H-O-R-E, to the H-O-R, whore, which is the house of the red shield. And shall make her desolate and naked. Nato'S nakedness is what this is talking about. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So this is what is happening now. Let me read the whole of Revelation 17. So the full context is clear prophetically. And there came out of this one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials. So this is where we are in terms of prophecy. We had the 7 angels, we had the 7 slip in my mind now, please pardon me. But the 7 vials of the very last stage. You had the 3 sevens, the 7 angels, the 7, pardon me, let's just carry on. And talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So this whore is being judged, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Horn represents a power. Head represents a kind of a civilizational complex. But anyway, I've dealt with that in an earlier book, The Appointed Time, the Tarrying and His Faith. Verse 4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So we're dealing with Mystery Babylon, and part of the mystery is that it is Edom, it is Gog and Magog. It comes in various guises. It is 7 heads and it is 10 horns. It is NATO, it is US, it is UK. It is indeed the Roman Catholic Church. It is those so-called Jews who are the synagogue of Satan, in fact. He comes with many guises, but all go back at some degree to the house of Esau. Because Esau is in all of those. And Esau is the twin brother of Jacob. And Esau has had a perpetual hatred against Jacob. So the whole essential drama that is being unfolding in the world is the drama of a war between Esau, who came in all these various guises. That's why when it says, he's Babylon also. When it says in Revelation chapter 18, the next chapter to this one, when it says Babylon is fallen, it has to echo it. Because Babylon comes in various sort of guises and various manifestations. Okay, it's the Catholic Church, it's the House of Rothschild, it's the United States, it's the UK, it is NATO. Okay, so the is fallen is sort of the echo to kind of convey the idea that no, it's not just one entity in one place. Okay, it is indeed a multiplicity, the 7 heads and the 10 horns and etc. Anyway, let me carry on. Verse 6, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints. That's the saints is just a word that means the children of Israel, Jacob. In other words, the sons of Jacob, those of the bloodline Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So the Israelites are the saints. And with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Well, this is trying to figure that out. You can't. Until the whole thing is sort of, brought together as is now being brought together. And verse 9, and by the way, I'm going to come right back to that, put a pin right there, but let me go to, Revelation chapter 10, Because one of the difficulties that people sort of don't quite acknowledge. A lot of people come preaching the word, and the less sure they are about what they preach, the louder they preach it. At least that's what I have discovered. In Revelation chapter 10, verse 7, it says, "But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets." So it's only in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, that the whole mystery of God should be finished. So anybody that thinks they have the full understanding and story, they better hold, kind of come with some humility and say, well, I ain't too sure. Because we have to wait till, the voice of the seventh angel shall begin to sound. But we close to that, isn't it? Because it is the seventh vial, which is wielded by the seventh angel, that is now here being talked about at Revelation chapter 17, isn't it? And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, so seven angels and seven vials, and talked with me. And so this is the one with having okay, I thought it had said it was the seventh angel, but anyway, here we are. And there are seven kings. Well, let me go back to verse 9. "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sitteth." So these are powers. "And there are seven kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space." Well, the one that is the United States. He has been the hegemon for the past, at least for real. He's been the hegemon at least since the Second World War. That's about 70 years, isn't it? 70, 80 years. But there were other hegemons before him. Before him it was Britain. So Britain as the hegemon kind of, fell essentially right after the Second World War, because it had to expend its treasures in fighting that war, and became indeed beholden to the United States when it did so. So it has taken Britain a good 70, 80 years to repay some of what it had borrowed, and some of that to the United States, just to fight that war. "And the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space." So the one that is not yet come is China. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So China has now come. China is the new sort of hegemon, but he won't last long. And indeed, one would be pardoned for thinking, well, maybe that was Russia. Because Russia is the one now that is demonstrating that power. And Russia is the one now that is the house of Joseph, who shall be that flame that would take down the house of Esau. You understand? But in terms of share purchasing power parity measure of economic power, China is already the one. China has surpassed the United States in terms of actual physical, real economy kind of capacity, productive capacity. The United States has hollowed out itself using sort of, financialized kinds of tools to in effect commit harikiri upon itself. Okay, I remember visiting China in 1987, and that was sometime after Nixon and Kissinger had made the overture to China, And Deng Xiaoping had sort of opened up the Chinese economy, and American firms were investing in China. And what American firms did was essentially to dismantle their productive capacity that they had in the United States and take it all and reassemble in China, where they could take advantage of much cheaper wage rates and also no hassle so far as unions were concerned, and sell the product that they would have made otherwise in the United States, make it now in China to China's benefit in effect, and sell it back to a guaranteed home market in the United States. Sometimes whole industries did the same thing because each one had to be competitive with the next. And that was the beginning of the end of U.S. Steel, for example. That was the beginning of the end of, for example, I think Corning Glass Works. And there was a whole sort of a town in some place in New England where all the major producers of glassware like that, all of them did the same thing so they could all remain competitive with each other. So the United States hollowed out itself in the interest of profit. And then they compounded that with, development of all kinds of financial engineering types of devices, purely financialized kinds of devices, for the making of profit, but only on Wall Street, but without it necessarily being backed by productive capacity, as it used to be. Certainly at the time of the Second World War, America was the great producer of actual stuff. They could produce all the planes and all the battleships and all the tanks and all the whatever that was needed to throw into that war. But right now they can't produce anything to sort of counter that which, Russia has shown them up to be naked with. They can't even produce the shells for the 155 millimeter artillery shells to keep Ukraine going against Russia. You can try scrounging up ammunition, in all the countries around the world that are their so-called allies, and when they do that, they still can't come up with what is required. And in any case, Russia is basically outgunning them. And also, in terms of the technological requirements of prevailing in that kind of modern warfare, Russia is also basically showing them to be deficient. Because whatever the United States throws at Russia, the Russians are well able to counter, and they need to shoot them down. I remember the Grim Reaper, the RQ-9 Reaper drone that they were using. The Americans were using there in the Black Sea to spy on the Russian port at Sevastopol. They shot that down, essentially. They didn't shoot it down with bullets, but we had a very capable Russian pilot that was well able to bring down that Reaper drone. Okay, so whatever the Americans come up with, it's being proven to be inadequate. With all the intelligence, satellite-based intelligence, and other kinds of intelligence that, the Americans have been well able to bring to the table, for purposes of tracking Russian troop movements and etc. And targeting, advice to give to the Ukrainians for use for the HIMARS and the 777s and so forth. Yeah, they worked for a while until the Russians figured out a way to basically counter. So NATO has been rendered naked. Okay, so where are we? Continuing. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition. Well, this is the one that rideth the beast. This is that, great whore, H-O-R, whore. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So they were kind of like, before the British, it was Spain. There was their powerful, right? And I forget now how, going backwards in time, who all had their little time. But it's there in that book, The Appointed Time. Verse 13, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast being the red dragon per se, and the rider of the red dragon, which is the HOR, or also called Mystery Babylon. 14, these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. So the Lamb is the Yeshua. He is the one that has been tasked to raise up another batch of gods. Let me come back to verse 15, put a pin right there. Verse 6, I have said ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Now he's not referring to all mankind, he's referring to those who are of the bloodline of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And verse 7 explains, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. So the idea is that he's there to train us up to become gods. Otherwise we will die like men. Because those who don't have that sort of task, shall we say, are otherwise destined to go to that fiery place where Lucifer rules. This is what is going on. So he is the Lamb, Yeshua. He is like that drill sergeant whose job it is, the way a drill sergeant will train up another platoon to go from being raw recruits to being soldiers. His job is to bring another batch of gods who were born to become gods, indeed to become gods. That is his job. So let me go back here to 15. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the HOR whore has been working its will, essentially, in the past 70, 80 years, through the United States. The United States itself is subject to that great financial power. Wall Street, but also the City of London. And is subject to, the City of London through the Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal, nor does it need any more to have any reserves. And they have the right to issue the currency. And indeed the right also to collect taxes through the IRS, which is a sort of a sister organization of the Federal Reserve. Yeah, that book that was written some time ago, The Creature of Jekyll Island. Oh God, I've forgotten the name of the author now. But that went into some detail as to that. And then 16 we've already read, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Because, all this, the wool has been pulled over our eyes, that we don't even know all this. The American people think that the Federal Reserve System is federal, belongs to them as an arm of the United States government. It does not. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And verse 18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Well, who do you think that is? That is otherwise called the city. Okay, that 1 square mile area within the middle of metropolitan London where the HOR resides. And guess what? Every year they have a little kind of ritual that they perform. They drag out 2 big statues, one of which they call Gog, not I, and the other which they call Magog. So they're even identifying who they are. Okay, so this is what is now prophetically happening, and all of it sort of ties together. Well, let me go back now to Ezekiel 39, because we've got to see the whole thing. I will try to give sort of verse by verse commentary, but some of these references are still a little bit mystifying, so bear with me. But I think the general picture should become very clear. So I start again, verse 1. Therefore, thou son of man, so this is the word being given to Ezekiel a long time ago. Prophesy against Gog, and say, thus saith the Lord God, Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So just to go to Genesis chapter 10, so we know who Gog is. The sons of Japhet, verse 2, Gomer and Magog. So Magog was actually not the son of Japhet. Magog was a bastard son. His actual father was Gog, that chief prince. That word prince there means one of category angel. So Gog is a fallen angel who sired Magog, who is nominally the son of Japhet, but the real father is God. And it goes on, and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech. So Tubal and Meshech, reference here, identifying who this Gog is, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, meaning that whole house of Japhet is now fallen under the sway of that prince, a fallen angel by the name of Gog, who fathered Magog, who was a brother of Meshech and Tubal. And through that Magog, that whole line of Japhet became subject to pollution. And that's why instead of that area where Japhet and his children settled, being called the Isles of Japhet, they called the Isles of the Gentiles. And when you do the breakdown of what the word Gentile means in the Paleo-Hebrew, it simply means those who are sons of the wicked, sons of that fallen angel. And the word there, prince, is there also, you find in the book of Daniel, chapter 12. It has other meanings, but the meaning that is relevant here is that of one who is of category angel. Here it is, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. So our prince is Michael, Archangel Michael. He's obviously of category angel, isn't he? Well, the great prince of the people of Japhet originally is that one now called Gog. And his line, in effect, because, even though those who are titularly of the line of Japhet, some of them go right back to Japhet, they don't go back to Gog. But Gog has become their prince, you understand? In the same way that anyone that cleaves to the house of Jacob, even though not of the bloodline of Jacob, but by virtue of cleaving to the house of Jacob, becoming a member of the house of Jacob that way, which Scripture provides for, their great prince will be Michael. That's how that works. And by the way, if one cleaves to the house of Jacob and becomes thereby a member of the congregation of Jacob, and there's laws to that, Deuteronomy chapter 23, Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 22, Exodus chapter 12, verse 48, I believe, Isaiah chapter 56, I believe, around verse 12, if I remember correctly. Who is to say? I don't know for sure, but they too may be able to graduate as gods. And all of that would have been a contract signed, written, and those who are to become gods are written in the book of life from before they come on the earth. You understand? And if you're written in the book of life, it is hard now to get yourself erased unless you're really, really willful. And because Most High will forgive and forgive and forgive. So that in effect you can then do what is required of that boot camp sergeant major, the Lamb, who is there to train us up to become another batch of gods. So there may be some strangers, quote unquote, literal non-seed line of Jacob, but who have attached themselves and cleave unto Jacob, who might well be able to join into that. And as I say so, I must also again reiterate that the bloodline does not per se determine a skin color. Do not get caught up with the idea that unless you are dark of skin, you cannot be an Israelite. That is wrong. And it is easy to prove because it's there in 2 Kings chapter 5, the story about Naaman. And it's there in verse 27. This is the curse upon Gehazi. The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cling unto thee. That these are reference to Gehazi, who is Israelite. And unto thy seed forever, forever, forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. So Gehazi, who was originally Negro and presumptively dark of skin, was turned into a leper white as snow, which was a problem that was brought to Elisha by this one Naaman, who was healed. But as Naaman was healed from that leprosy then fell on Gehazi. Why? Because he'd gone running after Naaman to collect a present after Elisha had refused such a present. And the curse upon Gehazi was not only upon him, but unto all his seed forever. Which means that today, unless that seed has been wiped out, and it doesn't say that that seed would be wiped out, so it means that today there would be a people who would be white of skin, but who are of the seed line of Israel. And the Spirit has given me who that people are today, who are specifically of the line of Gehazi, and who are a white people today. I'm not going to tell you who that people are, but it is sufficient to make the point that there would be today a white people on the planet who are nevertheless children of Israel, who nevertheless are a Negro people. Literally, because Negro simply in its original meaning means those people who are of the same tribal line as King David, which in the broad sense means all the children of Jacob, the 12 tribes. More narrowly, it means those who are of the tribe of Judah. So there is such a thing as white Negroes. It is not a contradiction in terms. Matter of fact, there was a Polish regiment that went with Napoleon's forces to re-enslave the Negro in Haiti. And they converted en masse, not converted, defected en masse to the Haitian cause. And at the conclusion of that revolution or revolt or what have you, when Haiti was established as a Negro republic, the first emperor there, Jacques Dessalines, gave the Poles full rights as Negroes in that land. As a matter of fact, in that decree when it was issued, he referred to them as the white Negroes of Europe. So the idea that Russia today would be of line Joseph should not be too, you should not sort of have the idea that now it can't be Russia. Especially when, as we now know, because the Russian icons are now famous all over YouTube, everybody is posting videos about the Russian icons, which show the prophets, which show the apostles, which show Yeshua as Negro, and which also show Russian ancestors as Negro, like Theodore, like Peter the Great, like Vlad the Impaler. When you really go to the genuine sources, because they've tried, there's been a sort of a whitening out project to kind of make them all white. So if you just do a sort of a not very deep search on people like Peter the Great, you'd come back thinking that, well, they're just white. But if you keep on digging, ultimately you will find, wait a minute now, the real deal was that these were Negro. You understand? But through natural processes, Negro people turn white. Gehazi is a kind of a case in point. If you become a leper in a biblical sense, not this Hansen's disease thing now, A biblical leper, all that happens is your pigment, you become depigmented. It happened to Miriam for a while, for 7 days, and so she was kept out of the camp until her pigment returned. There was one king of Israel who had to be separated into what they call a several house, because he came down with leprosy. And so and they had to they were sort of segregated out of the society, had to live in several houses, as they were called. Okay, and if you had enough of that going on to where they were shunned, in effect, by the rest of the society, then you set the stage for such people sort of mixing amongst themselves, and this is real. I remember when I went to Nigeria, they told me there were villages where all the people were albino. Either they came out albino or they had become lepers in the biblical sense. And so they went, because they were shunned by the society, they would live amongst themselves. And once they started living amongst themselves, marrying amongst themselves, now you set the conditions for that white skin, depigmented gene, so to say, to be propagated. And so now you create a whole new species. You understand? And if, because the sun is very unforgiving of those with depigmented skin, so if they now start to drift towards the northern climes, cooler climes, where the sun is a little bit more forgiving of that condition, now you not only have created a whole separate species, okay, where the tendency is for them to be white of skin, but they also move geographically, and now they live amongst themselves. You understand? So that the children of Israel were scattered first to places where never before mankind dwelt. That happened after the Assyrian captivity in around 720 or so BC. And in the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, if I remember correctly, verses 40 to 45, and verse 41 specifically, it says that those of the northern tribes went out, scattered out, into lands where never before mankind dwelt. And there they tried to keep the law that they were not keeping there in homeland Israel. So the lands where never before mankind dwelt included the Americas. It included far South Pacific. So that when they got to those places, they tended to name themselves after, they gave themselves Israelite names. So, and I've given this example before, those who reach far, far east as New Zealand today, they name themselves, the Amauri, the people of the east, because they'd gone so far east and they figured they had that distinction to themselves. Those who went to Hawaii call themselves Hawaii. Hawa is that Hebrew that means the Most High. So Hawaii is saying the children of the Most High. Those that went to the Americas, you had various tribe names, like for example Massachusetts was originally Mosewatusetts, so they were named after Moses. My land here of Trinidad was called Iyere, which is a Hebrew word that means God will provide, essentially, or the Iye is king, literally. So it is from this land that David Messiah is being raised up. The land of Haiti is actually, originally was Iyeti. It actually means a sort of a land of refuge, and it's now called Haiti, but originally it was Iyeti, which is Iye being that name of the Most High. And of course, when it's written in English with the H in front, even though it was silent when first written by the Spanish, It's written that way so that in English we tend to say Haiti, but it really was always to be silent, Haiti. But that too is a Hebrew name. And then when we got down into sub-Saharan Africa, so we couldn't go where Ham was already present. He was already present in the Nile Valley. He was already present in North Africa. When we got, some of them stayed actually where Ham already dwelt, and they were called Falasha, which means stranger. Still today, more than 2,000 years later, they still call Falasha, meaning stranger. But most went where never before mankind dwelt, and so we became those people that went to what's called sub-Saharan Africa today. And there we became known as Bantu, but also names like Congo. Congo is Kanago, which means that king over there is what that really means. I see some people have speculated that it refers to belt, but I don't think that is what that is. It means it is a reference to Nago. Nago is another way of saying nega. For the Yoruba people there in Nigeria, they also call themselves the Nago people, which means the people of the king. We do that with language. Okay, so Congo is ke, ket, letter ket, which means over there, and followed by Nago, and it becomes Kango or Congo or Kang, you understand. But that word Bantu has actually a Kemetic derivation. I've dealt with that in that earlier book, The Appointed Time. Ba is the prefix that means the house of, and then Intu. Intu is from the Egyptian Inter, NTR, from which we get the English word nature. And Inter means God in the Egyptian. So Ba Inter or Bantu means the house of those people who are gods. What did I just read in Psalms 82 verse 6? I have said ye are gods. For we were known to be the people of God. We were feared people because when the Most High picks up for us, nobody can defeat us. So Ba Intu means literally the house of those people who are men and gods. That's what Bantu really means. So we were Nago, people of the king. We were also Ba-Intu, people of people who are gods and men. That's like saying, and the saints, we are like the saints, you understand? The chosen ones, that's what that is saying. So, where was I? So go back to where I was. I think I was in Ezekiel 39. Yeah. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So these are the Gentiles, essentially. And Gog and Magog have already sort of identified themselves because they keep that festival every year there in the city of London, where they drag out those two statues, one named Gog, the other one named Magog. Okay, so we know who they're referring to. So it's again a sort of an arm of Babylon. And I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts. So this is NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's kind of a coded reference there to what became NATO. And I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand. So now they're naked. There is nothing they can bring that Russia will not be able to smite it down. Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel. Well, the mountains here of Israel is the power of Israel, with Israel being that power. Sorry, with Russia being that Israelite power. Russia being that house of Joseph, which shall be that flame, as we read in Obadiah. Thou and all thy bands and the people that is with thee. Because there's a whole, about 30-something at least, who keep pledging to support Ukraine until as long as it takes. Well, guess what? I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. And this is what we saw in Bakhmut. I was just listening to some YouTube channel. I think it was Colonel McGregor. He was quoting some figures to the effect that, just with the fall of Bakhmut alone, they killed in action, I think it was about 50,000, some people are saying, and some are saying even more. So-called a meat grinder. So if there are 50,000 killed in action, now they'll add to that wounded in action. But this is a reference to, this meat grinder reference is letting us to know the fulfillment of this. I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured, because there's so many carcasses. Thou shalt fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, said Yahweh. Are you going to fight God? And I'll come to what has gone on, because they strode the world as a colossus for as long as they had the grant of the dominion. But that dominion has now ceased in the spiritual. That dominion ceased in the spiritual as of the third day of the Hebrew year 6008, which was last year, 2022, which was March the 25th, that Friday. Their dominion ceased. That's when Revelation chapter 18 verse 2 was fulfilled in the spiritual. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. That is information I have been given. And now, having been fulfilled in the spiritual, what we are witnessing now is the unfolding of that in the physical. And it is, they can't believe what they see, because they have been so used to being the king of the hill. They're used to having their word obeyed merely by speaking it. And they cannot even begin to fathom that, wait a minute, their power has ceased. So now they're naked, and they don't even realize they're naked, they are exposed. All their business is exposed. Went past the thighs, went up past the rivers. That is all their business is exposed. And I will send a fire on Magog. Magog there now being a reference to the Gentiles in general. And in particular those with whom Esau is sort of combined, because Esau has become part of the Gentiles. That happened a long time ago. It's there in the book of Jasher, where the grandson of Esau, Zephu, he became the king of Kittim, one of the tribes of the Gentiles, also called Rome or Romim. And then they went on and conquered the rest of the isles of the Gentiles. So Esau has been mixing with the Gentiles from at least back in those days. Esau had already mixed in with the Hittites, the Canaanites, because he went and he married one of the Hittite daughters there that distressed his mother. And then he went on into the Arabian Peninsula and married a daughter of Ishmael. Okay, and Abraham kind of didn't approve of that one. And then he went on, he married a daughter there of Egypt. So Esau is mixed in with a whole lot of people. Okay, so, and with the polluted seed that came with the house of the Gentiles, which included a predisposition to paleness of skin, because we find in the book of Enoch, chapter 105, verses 5 and 6, because when Enoch was born, he was an albino. So his father, Lamech, was afraid that the child was not his, but belonged to a fallen angel, letting you know that they knew that children of fallen angels tended to be pale of skin. And that is why, for example, even the Arabs, who were very, very dark of skin in the beginning, Ishmael was very dark of skin, and the Ishmaelites had also mixed in through Hagar with the Egyptians, and they were very dark of skin. But nowadays the Arabs are sort of a paler skinned people. They still got a clear color to them. But Arabs today are certainly lighter in skin color than your typical Negro. Even though they would have started out darker of skin. So that is because of the sort of pollution that was brought about by mixing with the Gentiles. But we cannot say that where there is a white-skinned Israelite, that paleness of skin is due to mixing with the Gentiles. No, because we do have that scripture there with what's his name, Gehazi, and we also have what been guided as to the Russians. They became also pale of skin. But you had processes, first of all, miscegenation, yes, so that would have brought some degree of pollution, no doubt. Scripture says, and Ephraim, as to Ephraim, that he is a cake not turned, meaning he's sort of dark on the bottom but white on top because he's mixed with the people. So yes, there would be some of that, but the bloodline remains not back to a fallen angel, but it remains back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And some of it had nothing to do with the mixing, but had to do with like what happened to the children of Gehazi. So they were either albino or leprous in the biblical sense, and so had paleness of skin for that reason. And that was the same with the Nephites in the Book of Mormon. There was no reference in terms of the whiteness of the Nephites. That was not attributed in the Book of Mormon to any mixing with the Gentiles, but they were white. Anyway, so let me carry on. Where was I? So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One in Israel. Heathen there in the original Hebrew is Hatatan, which means a people who go into another land belonging to another people to rape, pillage, plunder, and to take what does not belong to them. That is what the real meaning of heathen is. So what the oligarchs wanted to do to Russia is the behavior of a heathen. This is what Putin has put a stop to. When they carved up Africa at the Berlin Conference, okay, so that they could go into Africa and loot Africa for its natural resources. And Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman lets us to know that has remained the agenda even after decolonization. That's why they took out Patrice Lumumba, because he wasn't playing ball. So when a president refuses to be paid off, so to say, bribed, so to say, by the CIA, they tend to get assassinated. And when they bribe by the CIA and other agencies like that, then they make their countries wide open to the rapine, pillage, plunder, so that these multinationals can go in and take whatever it is that they want to take, whether it is the oil, or whether it is the copper, or whether it is the diamonds, or whether it is the, you name it, coltan, whether it is whatever it is, gold even. That is the deal. So it is a combination. It's like the mafia type operation, where they offer you a choice between silver and lead. That's the choice they offer the presidents. Take the bribe, which is the silver, and guess what? If you don't take the bribe, we will, you take the lead, which means we're going to kill you. That's what that means. So if the economic sort of inducements fail, then they move to the what Perkins called the jackals, who are the assassins. And if that fails, then they move the actual boots on the ground. They send in a whole army to take you out. You understand? So that's how that goes. So these are the real heathens. And the Most High let them succeed because they had the dominion. Let me take a minute to kind of make that point very clear, because there in Genesis 25, if I remember correctly. Here's the dominion that was given to Esau. No, it's not 25, it must be 28. No, it's 27. Here we are. Yeah. This is and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. This is after the dominion had been granted to Jacob. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. This is the dominion now. That's this blessing already given to Jacob. And of the dew of heaven from above. That's already given to Jacob. But here in 40 we see the difference. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, so he would get the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And 41 refers here now to the hatred. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. And that hatred never went away. So as compared with the sword, this was the blessing given to Jacob. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee. So this is dominion. And nations bow down to thee. That's the dominion. Be Lord over thy brethren. That's the dominion. And let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. That's dominion. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. This was this covenant. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. That was agreed, that was covenanted with Abraham. So of Abraham's seed, this blessing, this covenant passed to Jacob. And there is no requirement that he live by the sword. The coercion in terms of the grant of the dominion given to Jacob rests in this covenant that goes back to Abraham. Cursed be he that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. So when people know that God is with you, and if you come against you, or if they come against you, then it means that they're tangling with God. Then they will tend to obey. Then they will tend to submit to that dominion. So this is what was given to Jacob. But then there came the point where that dominion was given to Esau. But the way this was given to dominion, it was by the sword he shall live. And when you read the sealed book of Moses, you find a sort of a picture for this, living by the sword, because this was also the case with Cain and Abel. And Cain was envious of Abel because Abel's offerings were accepted and his were not. And Satan worked with those feelings that Cain had of envy and hatred. And until Cain made a pact with Satan, and to seal the pact he had to kill Abel. So this is the blood, this is the sword. And that was the beginning of the so-called priesthood of Mahan. When you break it down, Mahan is just another way of saying the Amachan. So that suffix there is referencing Cain, people of Cain. And Amma, the prefix, is referencing the people of Cain. So that's the priesthood of Mahan, is essentially saying that is a priesthood go back to Cain. And the pact that he made with Satan, sealed by the blood of Abel. So Esau had to make a similar pact. That's why Esau's dominion has been accompanied by blood. He had to make a blood offering up to Satan every so often. That's why it is, and that was especially so in the 20th century with all the wars, where the killing was of an industrial scale. You understand? But when Jacob returns to the dominion, Scripture says this is now the 7th millennium, where the swords will be beaten down into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. The lion will live with the lamb peacefully, and etc. and etc. So there'll be no need for war. That will not be a feature of life in the 7th millennium. Okay, so let me carry on here now. I'm trying to be clear as to the prophetic aspect of NATO being naked. Okay, so I forget where we were. Okay. Verse 8, Behold, it is come, and it is done, saith Yahweh. This is the day whereof I have spoken. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth, and shall set on fire, and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaffs and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years. Well, we have a bit more than bows and arrows these days, but the principle is the same. So that they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forest, for they shall burn the weapons with fire, and they shall spoil those that spoil them, and rob those that rob them, saith Yahweh. I don't need to explain that. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel. So this is what we're seeing there in as they sort of throw themselves upon Russia, the mountains of Israel, the power of Israel, which is the power of Russia, they're falling. The valley of the passengers on the east of the sea, and it shall stop the noses of the passengers, and there shall they bury Gog and all his multitude, and they shall call it the valley of Hamon Gog. Hamon Gog, when you break it down, means the pact of Gog. So that is basically, that's in the valley of NATO, because they're in this pact, right? And it is headed up essentially by Gog and Magog, or Gog. Well, let me leave it at the Hor, H-O-R. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying of them, that they may cleanse the land. Well, all right. Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, saith Yahweh. So it is Yahweh that is doing this. It is Yahweh that is given Brother Putin this enormous power. And Brother Putin has proven his what shall we say, that he's a worthy one to carry that power, because he's exercised restraint all the way through. He hasn't been a deceiver, he hasn't been a liar. He's tried to make peace. And they have essentially lied to him or ignored him. 14, and they shall sever out men of continual employment passing through the land to bury with the passengers those that remain. Okay. And the passengers that pass through the land when any. Okay. And verse 16, also the name of the city shall be Hamona. Thus shall they cleanse the land. So Hamona is just the pact. Or it also can be taken to mean the promise, referring to that Nato'S promise to its constituents. And thou, son of man, thus saith Yahweh, speak unto every feathered fowl, and to every beast of the field, assemble yourselves and come. Gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that ye may eat flesh and drink blood. So this was the great sacrifice, because of that meat grinder that has taken place there in Ukraine. So this was prophesied and fulfilled now. Ye shall eat the flesh of the mighty and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, of rams, blah, blah, blah. And ye shall eat fat till ye be full, and drink blood, blah, 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 blah. Thus ye shall be filled at my table with whole, blah, 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 blah. And I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So the heathen here are all these colonial powers. This is referring to Joseph Borrell, the foreign minister of the EU, talking about Europe is a garden and outside of Europe is a jungle. Straight away kind of, alluding to that time when Europe was all over Africa and the rest of the so-called third world, pillaging and raping and plundering, and thinking that the greatest thing since the invention of sliced bread, or even before that. So the house of Israel shall know that I am Yahweh their God from that day and forward. And the heathen, meaning these colonialists, shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity. It wasn't because we are stupid, it wasn't because we are less than. It was because we disobeyed the Most High, because they trespassed against me. Therefore hid I my face from them, and gave them into the hand of their enemies. So fell they all by the sword. Whose sword? Esau's. According to their uncleanness and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. So we had our time, and I'll talk now about the time. But let me finish this first. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh, now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous for my holy name. So now our time is up. After that they have borne their shame, which means we the Israelites, we the Negro, we the Bantu, principally, house of Judah, principally, have borne this shame, and all their trespasses whereby they have trespassed against me, when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. When I have brought them again from the people, and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am Yahweh their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, these colonial powers, under white supremacy. But that was an incidental, that wasn't even the fundamental. But I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, saith Yahweh. So it is letting us know that all what we have suffered, the Negro, has been on account of the iniquity of our forefathers. And here now that iniquity is being brought to an end. And look at verse 6, and I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. He told me to say this, that when he says among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, this is actually referring here now to Israelites, to the Negro. And that fire, on one side the fire is on Magog, which is what now Brother Putin is bringing upon Esau, bringing upon NATO, which he has rendered naked in the sight of the world. At the same time, this fire that he's bringing on them that dwell carelessly in the isles, referring to his people, the children of Israel, wherever scattered. Most of us, sort of beholden or persuaded by various false doctrines and religions. The fire that he is going to send amongst us, he told me to say this, because we're dwelling carelessly in the isles, following this and that religion, it's going to be the fire of knowledge. The fire of that awakening that is bringing us back to an understanding of who we are. Because we were made to forget that we were even Israel. That was what Esau's pact was with his confederates. This was Esau's pact. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. So they tried to make us forget that we were the children of God, that we were the Bantu in that sense. The children the house of those who are gods and men. And who are these enemies? The tabernacles of Edom, that's Esau, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines, the inhabitants of Tyre or Tyre, Asur also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lot. So this was that Harmon, the pact. Harmon Gog, that's what that was. This was the pact they made amongst themselves. So they have known all this time who we were. Perhaps not all the hoi polloi among them, but certainly those who were of the priesthood of Mahan, where these secrets were known and kept, including in those so-called, secret societies, whether the Masonic lodges or whether Skull and Bones or whether whatever, the Jesuits or whoever, they have known this information. They have known exactly who we were, and they have dreaded this day. Because they know, and it is there in Scripture. If you read the story of Judith, it's fully laid out. They know that when we, the Israelites, the true Negro people, keep the law that the Most High gave us, that He covenanted with us to keep. When we keep that law, there is no force among the other people of the earth that can overcome us. When that's the case, you can have 2 or 3 people scattering 1,000. If you read the story of Gideon, it was actually more than that. Okay, you could have Simeon and Levi basically slaughtering a whole city. Okay, and that's why still today we are known for our courage on the battlefield, because there comes a spirit that, takes over, that gives us that wherewithal to be that brave on the battlefield, and that has not gone away. That's why in every war where we have fought, forget now which side we are on, because yes, Buffalo soldiers were fighting in the wrong cause. Yes, my forefathers fought with the British against the Americans in the War of 1812. Yes, I can't say that the British was the right side. Okay, but when in the Battle of Bladensburg, my forefathers there in the Corps of Colonial Marines entered that battlefield, it was a rout, and the Americans ran from that battlefield. You understand? If you read the histories now, they're not going to tell you all that. If you read, just Wikipedia, or you read, or you go wherever Google sends you, you will think, well, that was just the Royal Marines. But when you go deeper into regimental records and so forth, you understand, wait a minute, that was the Corps of Negro Marines. So when they ran from the battlefield, Washington, D.C. was left undefended. And I can testify that my grandfather, 7 generations removed from me, the first of my line in here in Trinidad, whose name was David, he received a reward of £1, was it £1, 4 shillings and 1 pence for his part in that action, which included setting fire to big buildings there in Washington, D.C., including the White House. Okay, so every war there has been, the Negro has seemingly had to prove his worth. Because it was after the Haitian revolt that the British had understood, the fighting prowess and courage of the Negro. That's when they decided to create this Negro Corps of Colonial Marines, when they were then fighting against the Americans. And after the Americans lost at Bladensburg, that's when they set up a Negro Corps down there in New Orleans, at the Battle of New Orleans, using the free men of color that were there in New Orleans. Oh, and that made a difference. And then, of course, the Buffalo soldiers, even during the Civil War, you had a Negro troop that was there fighting for the Confederates. I don't blame them. You do what you had to do. And they were also recognized for their courage because they were handpicked by that general that used that troop as essentially a bodyguard to himself. And then when you had the First World War, another set of heroics. My grandfather was in that one in the Battle of Jerusalem. Had shrapnel wounds to prove it. When the British forces wouldn't go. When the general, I think it was Allenby that was the general in that battle, called upon the Australians and then the New Zealanders, they wouldn't go because they had to go into a hail of machine gun fire. And then they called the stupid ones the West Indians. And guess what? We got it when we went into that hail of machine gun fire and prevailed. And it was only then that the New Zealanders and the Australians, then everybody decided, okay, it was now a rout. That's how the Battle of Jerusalem was won. By Negro Israelite blood fighting for those British. You understand? So all of this is now what is going on. Now let me go to the timetable, because all of this started, at least so far as my little contribution is concerned, here on this YouTube channel, with a demand letter upon the Catholic Church and upon the state of Israel that he made me to make. That was the very first upload to this channel. And in that one, he actually gave me the prophetic sort of timetable. And I made some mistakes, not in the timetable, but in what it meant. Let me explain. Because he had me to go back to, and I have to give credit to Brother Big Levi, because it was because of his YouTube channel that he had a brother that was given some of this information. But anyway, credit where credit is due. And I'm not going to be one to... He had me to go to Daniel chapter 12. And in Daniel chapter 12, verses 11 and 12, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,330 days. So this is that first verse 11 here. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, that event, he let me to know, coincided with the siege of Jerusalem that was mounted by Nebuchadnezzar, which Ezekiel recorded in, I think it was Ezekiel chapter 25, where he let us to know that it was the 10th day maybe it was 24. Yeah. Verse 1. Again in the 9th year, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month. Okay, so the 10th day of the 10th month, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, write thee the name of the day, even of this same day, the king of Babylon set himself against Jerusalem this same day. Okay, so that was the 10th day of the 10th month on the Hebrew calendar, which now corresponds to the 31st day of the 12th month on the Gregorian calendar. December 31st. Okay, on the Gregorian calendar, and that year was 606 BC on the Gregorian calendar. Okay. You add 1,290 days 1,290 days. That brought us to, I forget, but do the math. It's in that very first upload. That brought us to where the Muslim forces had taken over in Jerusalem, and they had, I think, built or started to build the Dome of the Rock. That's what happened then. Okay. But the main key point there is December 31st, 606 BC. And by the way, 1,290 is numerologically a number 12. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 9 is 12. Right? Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. And then Daniel chapter 12, verse 12. So 12 and 12. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. So add another 1,335 days, a day being a year, to whatever that year was that had brought us to the 1,290, when the Dome of the Rock was I think, first sort of established. That brings us to, and if we go to the day, brings us to December 31st, 2021. Okay, that's the significance. In addition, the 1,335, 1,305 and 30 days, that's 1,335 days, a day being a year. 1 and 3, 4, 4 and 3, 7, 7 and 5 is 12. So numerologically that too is a 12. So between Daniel chapter 12 verse 11 and Daniel chapter 12 verse 12 is a 12 followed by a 12. And it is the 12th verse of Daniel chapter 12. 12 by 12 is 144. So the Most High let me to know that this was a reference. He that waiteth and cometh is a reference to the 144,000. Okay? But also, he let me to know that on that self-same day, 10th day of the 10th month on his calendar, December 31st, on Gregorian calendar, but exactly 2,625 days after Babylon first put Jerusalem under siege, he let me to know that the kickoff of these end times, so far as this action is concerned, would be when Israel would put Babylon under siege. Okay? So, and that he also let me to know was fulfilled. He let me to know much later, actually, because it was only fairly recently that he gave me that information, that it indeed was on December 31st, 2021, that Russia laid down, or put down the gauntlet when Russia told the United States and its allies, look, here is now what we require to guarantee Russia's security. And let us come to negotiation. And if you don't want to negotiate, or if you want to drag on with meaningless talk, Russia will do what Russia considers itself necessary to do to then guarantee its own security. That took place December 31st, 2021. And that was the historical fulfillment of this turning, so to say, whereby what Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon did unto Jerusalem on that self-same day, December 31st, 606 BC, that was reversed December 31st, 2021. Coinciding also with the not quite ending of the dominion that had been exercised by Babylon, by Esau, until it's now being reversed, because he let me to know, and it's there in that first upload. He gave me to say that Revelation chapter 18 verse 2 was fulfilled. And he let me to know it would be fulfilled, because I sent out that letter on May on March the 1st. So even when I sent it on March the 1st, 2022, that gauntlet had been laid down. Israel was already laying siege to Babylon as of the previous December 31st. Right, so I sent out in that letter to the Catholic Church in the modern state of Israel that Revelation 18:2 would be fulfilled. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. And that date he gave me to give to them was going to be the third day of the new year 6008, which in the Gregorian calendar was March 25th, 2022. So I sent out the audio letter on March the 1st, and in that audio letter, March 25th was cited as being the date when Revelation 18:2 would be fulfilled. And the mistake I made was to think, and it's a mistake I'd made earlier, but with a different scripture, that it would be fulfilled in the physical, when in fact it was not to be in the physical, but in the spiritual. So since then, since March 25th, 2022, all what we have been seeing is the fulfillment in the physical. So even prior to then, Russia started its special military operation on February 24th. And they went in very softly. They, it was it wasn't, they specifically did not call it a war. Because evidently it was Putin's intent to show resolve, to show seriousness, and to bring the opposing party to the negotiating table, which they succeeded in doing. And as of April the 1st, 2022, just over a year ago now, Russia and Ukraine, under the auspices of Erdogan and Turkey, had reached an agreement. And US, UK, NATO was having none of it, so they dispatched Boris Johnson, who was then the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, to tell Zelensky, no, we're going to back you. We're not going to accept this peace deal. Get out of it. Okay. And all what you need, you will get. And no doubt they were using the same kind of, Anthony Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, silver or lead, take the silver. So he was bribed and he took the bribe. But the sort of, alternative that he was given was, I'm sure it was basically silver. And he understood well enough. Well, let me not go off on what would be a speculation. But what I was also given to give was that Revelation chapter 19, verse 18 would be fulfilled, which is parallel to what we just recently read, or just, not that few minutes ago read, in terms of Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 17. Revelation chapter 19, verse 18, that ye may eat the flesh of kings. Well, verse 17 prior to that. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. I was given that this prophecy would be fulfilled as of Passover on the Most High's calendar, which was April 5th last year. And that one too, I thought, well, okay, that's going to happen in the physical. And only afterwards, he reminded me, because he taught me that lesson before, but sometimes I'm slow on the uptake, that that was to happen in the spiritual first, and only afterwards would it sort of work itself out in the physical. Because he taught me that in connection with Revelation chapter 14. Let me give it to you. Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So he gave me the date for this. And the date he gave me for this was actually Sunday, March 24, 2019, which was the first day, New Year's Day, 6005 on the Most High's calendar. And there too I made the mistake of thinking that that would happen in the physical. But rather it happens first in the spiritual, and then it takes some time to work itself out in the physical. And that's a principle that is well expounded in the seed portion, chapter 21, verse 63. There we go. And the elect shall begin to gather from the four corners of the earth, But this gathering shall not be done in haste, nor shall it be a physical gathering, but it shall be a spiritual gathering that is done in wisdom and according to the guidance of the Holy Ghost. So he let me to know that, and I seem to have, after I learned the lesson, I still, when it came now to this matter, which is to do now with the fowls of the air coming to a great supper, verses 17 and 18, and I saw an angel blah blah blah, which is also there in Ezekiel 39, parallel verse 17. And thou son of man, thus saith Yahweh, speak unto every feathered fowl, and to every beast of the field, assemble yourselves and come, gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice, that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that ye may eat flesh and drink blood. Well, so he gave me a date for that, April 5th, which was Passover last year, April 5th, 2022. Well, as of April 1st, Ukraine and Russia had come to a deal. Immediately, Boris Johnson, I forget what date he actually, scuttled the deal, may have been the day after April 2nd or 3rd. But having scuttled the deal, that meant that the war would continue. So as of April 5th, the date I was given, which was Passover, this Ezekiel 39 verse 17, parallel to Revelation chapter 19 verse 17 and 18, was nevertheless fulfilled, but fulfilled in the spiritual. And then after that has worked itself out in the physical, to where we had the Battle of Bakhmut, which they called the meat grinder, to where there is the what is it? Here in verse 2, and I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee. So this is being fulfilled again and again. So Ukraine started with an army of about 600,000. A sixth part of 600,000 is 100,000. So that was what was left. So 500,000 of that first army became casualties, of which were killed, I think the figure that was put forward was something like 150,000. And so when you add casualties, but not killed, wounded, and etc., it went from 150,000 killed to about 500,000 total casualties, leaving only a sixth part. And that slipped out of the mouth of Ursula von der Leyen when she was at one point talking about, the cost of the war in terms of casualties, and how many she called them, I think she called them officers that were killed. But, they didn't want to admit to that. And that army has been subsequently reconstituted from NATO. So they continued to fight, to where then Bakhmut became the meat grinder. And so the fulfilling of that prophecy regarding the great feast that the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field were called to. And it'd be, sort of somewhat metaphorical. But that is all what has been going on. So this Russia-Ukraine thing, well, I'd mentioned, the Russia laid down the gauntlet precisely as of December 31st. Well, that was given by Foreign Minister Lavrov, and it's there on their website, where he basically said what he said. That became the laying of siege of Israel, Russia being Israel, upon Babylon being US, UK, NATO, and the great whore that rideth that beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So all of this is now prophetically being fulfilled. That is what has been going on. But also what I wanted to mention in terms of the so Esau, his dominion came to an end in the spiritual on March 25th, 2022. Babylon is fallen, meant that they no longer exercise the dominion. So this is how now NATO is naked and they don't know, wait a minute, we just had to say boo and everybody would jump out of fear. Russia shows no fear of US, UK, NATO because they know what they have. And they know because they did the homework. They know that the United States has no defense against what they can bring now and have demonstrated it now most recently with that Patriot missile battery that they basically destroyed. And now America knows it too. Now, what does that mean? Because US, UK, NATO, they know that their time is up. At least some of them do. I think it's here. Yes, I quoted it earlier. The doom of Babylon. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. Substitute HOR for WHORE. And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So this is the end prophesied for that one mystery Babylon that rideth the beast, the red dragon. Well, it just so happens that the patron saint of Russia is St. George. And St. George is that one whose destiny it was to slay the dragon, wasn't it? So this is, don't sort of discount the sort of symbolism, that sort of carries. So Russia's prophetic destiny is to slay that dragon. But this red dragon here, which is the HOR. All right, well, if the HOR knows that this is its destiny, whether the neocons do or not is a separate question, because the neocons are also working for this HOR, isn't it? It would explain why they have steadily escalated, because for them it's also existential, just as it is existential for Russia. And Russia simply will not submit to being broken up, to being pillaged, raped, plundered by this Babylon system. They will not. They might have had a complacent Boris Yeltsin in that regard, because for a while they were cleaning up in Russia. Okay, the oligarchs. But that is what Putin put a stop to. So they can't bribe him. He's not being, not knuckling under to the threat of lead. So, this silver versus lead threat doesn't work with Putin. Okay, they can't get to him with the jackals to assassinate him because he is great power in himself. Okay. And now third option is to bring an army against him. And he's basically showing them that he could defeat that army. And defeat that army with weapons, which, if you just take it to their logical conclusion, those same weapons he can point at the White House and take out the White House at any time he wants. He could point at Pentagon and take out the Pentagon anytime he wants. He can point at Langley in Virginia, the headquarters of the CIA, and take that out at any time he wants. He can even decide, well, he's going to take out Victoria Newland at any time he wants. Long distance targeting, okay. Press a button and that's it. He can take out Zelensky anytime he wants. But he's always been a model of restraint. But here now is the calculation. If HOR, US, UK, NATO, understand that this is now their final end, understand that the gig is up, so to say, understand that they no longer have the dominion, it is, I would say, likely that they have fixed upon a Samson strategy. In other words, they know they're going down. They will commit suicide and basically try to take down the rest of the world with them. In the same way that Samson in scripture, he's the one that was, his eyes were gouged out and everything. And but his strength had come back, and he was he basically brought down the temple upon his own head, but upon the head of all those who tormented him as well. So that's a Samson option. And so it would explain why they have been on this course of continual escalation. Because after you've been the hegemon, after you've exercised the dominion, it's hard now to bow down, isn't it? So they'd rather commit suicide. And if they're going to commit suicide, well, all right, what have they left? What they have left is, notwithstanding Russian ability and power to take out on a first strike anybody they wish, knowing that those missiles will get through. That still leaves a substantial power in the hands, certainly of the United States, in the form of submarines, okay, which can do a retaliatory strike. And just the American submarine force alone has enough power to take out Russia if they want, at that point. Okay? So that is the hand that, or that is the potential that certainly restrains Putin and Russia, because Putin and Russia, they don't want to have to is what's called mutual assured destruction. And Putin is being quoted as saying, well, all right, we will not submit. And if it comes to where now the very existence of Russia is threatened, yes, then we will use nuclear weapons, but otherwise we will not. And we will use nuclear weapons expecting in that case to become martyrs. That's his word, not mine. Because you would expect then that, there would be a retaliatory strike that could then take out Russia through the submarine fleet, which they can't target the submarine fleet ahead of time because they can't really know where their fleet is. Okay? And then it would be up to the Mossad to sort out who's who was right and who was wrong, essentially. That's what Putin said. Which lets us to know that Putin is not inclined to use that first strike capability that he has. But he wants the West to come to its senses. That's what he wants. Right? No, if they don't come to their senses, and basically now they take it all the way to this Samson strategy, then, well, we will see what we will see. However, why am I not bothered about that? I'm not bothered about that because the Most High is in control. And the Most High says what? At Ezekiel chapter 39. We start at verse 2. And I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee. And I'm going to throw in the eye, and I will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. And verse 3, and I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand. So this verse 3, okay, maybe it doesn't apply to the submarine fleet that is there ready to perform a retaliatory strike in case all is lost on the surface of the earth. But now here comes, if God is in charge, he might very well say, no, I will not let you to do that. And for whatever reason, maybe human error, maybe human frailty, maybe human foible, maybe the captains will not be sure whether they indeed do have an order where they are to unleash all of their nuclear doom upon the world, including Russia. But whatever be the case, the Most High can stop it. You understand? But for right now, what we do know is that US, NATO, UK, the HOR, Gog and Magog, Babylon, whatever term you want to use that applies to this confederacy that has been against the Negro in what is the Bible calls the war of Armageddon, or the war against Armageddon, which is a war against the rise of Negro power, Israelite power. That he can basically, enforce here what he's saying here in verse 3, by whichever means may turn out to be the case. Okay? But for the time being, he is naked. Isaiah 47. Isaiah 47. Verse 2. When we started verse 1, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground, there is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. In other words, she has been a queen, she's not used to sitting in the dust. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. So from being a queen, now she has to be a servant girl. Uncover thy locks. Make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the pièce de résistance. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. So this is what now is prophesied. And what is also prophesied elsewhere in Scripture is that we will have a seventh millennium, a millennium of peace, which means there will be not that mutual assured destruction that is certainly a fear to be concerned about. But also, the thing about the Samson option is that it involves suicide, and most people kind of, shrink back from suicide. So if it is that the ones who are called upon to continue the escalation somehow get to understand that taking that next escalatory step will trigger a Kinzhal coming at them, for which they have no defense, chances are they might desist from taking that next escalatory step. So we will see if indeed the escalation will continue. They're now talking about, bringing F-16s into the mix. But the military specialists who know about these things that know that would be a lost cause. The Russians will be well able to take down those F-16s from so far away that the F-16 won't even see the Russian plane that fires the missile that takes them down. So that's going to make no difference. Okay, so we will see what US, UK, NATO, what they do. We will see whether this queen that is used as sitting a queen on the throne will in the end condescend to sit in the dust and to be that servant girl grinding meal. Because that's prophesied elsewhere. That's there in Isaiah chapter 49. And it's there in verse 23, isn't it? Started verse 22. Thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will lift up my hand to the Gentiles, and set up my standard to the people. And they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried upon their shoulders. And kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens thy nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face toward the earth, and lick up the dust of thy feet. And thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. So with that, I will end it there, giving all praise, giving all glory, giving all exaltation unto the Most High God, Yahweh. And to all still listening, I say Shalom. There was a piece I wanted to also bring you, but I think this one is quite long enough. All right, so with that, Shalom.